And then I was going to show the credit cloud,
Mm-hmm.
what basically is needed information wise to get started with a client. So
Mm-hmm. Is that something they can do themselves for their clients? You're going to give them the option, or is better just for them to pass the clients to me and I'll input that
to
information?
you, and then you'll input them.
Okay,
So
perfect.
that might not be, it might be, better just to kind of go over what the process is,
Yeah,
along with the documentation that's needed from the
from
client
the
that's getting
client.
the credit repair.
Got it. All right, so muchas gracias, buenos días. Estamos empezando esta hermosa clase. Gracias por darse ese espacio para seguir fortaleciendo nuestras herramientas como agentes. Antes de empezar, bueno, les había dicho anteriormente, pero les repito que María Cristina está aquí acompañándonos hoy, sin embargo, se encuentra recuperándose de una intervención, así que por ahora le estamos enviando toda nuestra buena energía para que tenga una pronta recuperación. Y mientras tanto, yo le estoy tomando la posta para acompañarlos en esta sesión. Bueno, la clase de hoy es especialmente importante porque vamos a hablar de algo que muchas veces define si un cliente puede o no comprar una propiedad, su puntaje de crédito. Como saben, en nuestro trabajo encontramos constantemente clientes que sí tienen el deseo de comprar una casa, pero incluso tienen ingresos, pero su puntaje de crédito se convierte en una barrera que les cierra las puertas del financiamiento. Entonces, por eso hoy quiero presentarles a Susan Griffin, una especialista en reparación de crédito enfocada especialmente en hipotecas. Eso es importante porque a veces las empresas que se especializan en ayudar a las personas con su crédito no necesariamente están enfocados en lo que un banco que va a dar una hipoteca está mirando. Entonces, esto es especialmente importante porque esta empresa se concentra en que solamente las personas que están buscando comprar una casa son las personas a las que ayudamos en esta empresa. No a cualquier persona que está buscando mejorar su crédito. Entonces eso nos asegura que vamos a tener un mejor servicio porque no hay tanta cantidad de gente para muchas otras motivos o razones por las cuales ellos estén arreglando su crédito. Esto es específico, que quieren arreglar su crédito porque desean comprar su casa. Lo más importante es que vamos a trabajar Susan y yo de la mano. Yo me voy a encargar de atender directamente a sus clientes en español o en inglés, lo que sea más apropiado para el cliente. Y para que cuando ustedes tengan clientes con puntajes muy bajos o relativamente bajos, o incluso que no sean tan bajos, pero tienen esos clientes que dicen, yo quiero el mejor interés o yo quiero el mejor programa, tienen que estar arriba de los 700. Entonces pueden que no tengan un crédito terrible, pero que igual quieren el mejor, entonces igual podemos trabajar con esos clientes. Y pues con los clientes que tienen puntajes muy bajos, en lugar de perder esa oportunidad, podamos guiarlos por un camino claro que les abra nuevamente las puertas para comprar una casa. Susan va a dar la exposición en inglés. Cualquier pregunta podemos dejar para el final para yo responder o Susan en español o en inglés. Así que Susan, thank you so much for your patience for letting me do the introduction in Spanish. I was basically telling them that you and I are working hand in hand to help their clients in the Latin American community and all of the club, the agents and their clients if they're looking to better the credit score to purchase a home. So I'm super happy to have you here. Homeward Credit, it's an excellent company that works towards, helping people repairing their credit scores. And Susan is an expert who is going to be working hand in hand with me and with every agent of the club. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Susan Griffin with Homeward Credit. And what we do is basically we can help your clients increase their credit score to be able to qualify for a better loan program, possibly more house. I've seen where people, might have had, limitations on the amount that they could qualify for. But once we were able to clear some things off of their credit, it enabled them to, not only get a better loan program, possibly a better rate, but also a higher dollar amount, which is always important. And depending upon the area that you're in. I know I'm in Tampa. And I know that if people, like 300,000 is like the minimum, best is higher. So, a little bit about Homeward Credit. We have a pretty cool process. Basically, you identify that you have a client that might need credit repair. You send them to Angelus, and then what happens is she would be able to input that information into an encrypted software, and go over with the client, setting them up with a credit monitoring system that is connected with our software, and it's called Credit Hero. And if you can see my screen, there it says that you can order your credit report for $1. That's for the first week. And that credit report is all three bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and it's a soft pull to your client. So there's no hard pulls. Then that allows us to do the consultation, which I do. The consultation is free to go over the credit report with the client to identify exactly what needs to be corrected. There may be fictitious names, there may be old addresses, old employers, can get those corrected. And then any collections, derogatories, bankruptcies, just each individual might be different as to how many items would need to be repaired. And then that is kind of folds into what the cost would be. So basically, we start at a flat fee. If we do one thing, it's $600. I have seen most of averages between 600 and 1,000, depending upon what is on the person's credit. Now, if they have 34 items, I had one recently that had 34 items. Their cost was a little bit more than the $1,000, but at the end of the day, we can, we work with the client on that as well once we get to a point and they're ready to move forward. The software that I mentioned is really, really cool because it allows you, the client, and Angelus, the affiliate, and myself, of course, I'm the admin, can watch the process throughout, as opposed to a lot of credit repair companies. The client doesn't know. They don't know where to go. They don't know what's going on unless they get an alert or something on their phone. So I love this because every time there's a change or an update, it folds into the system. Now back to the credit report, the dollar is for like the first week, and then after that it's $16.99. We give a 90-day guarantee. It's a contract that is signed in the beginning. So we ask that you keep the credit monitoring, or the client keep it for at least 90 days. I'm not saying it takes 90 days to clear the credit. I'm just saying that that's what our guarantee is. Basically, that's kind of the gist of the beginning portion. Once we've done the consultation, we've priced it, the client decides to move forward, and they pay based on whatever we've set up on a payment plan, or if they decide to pay it all up front, there's multiple different ways. Then the file goes to our compliance department, where our attorneys are and everybody that handles sending out the letters to get the items removed. Then there's like a window. I like to say, you're going to see results possibly see results in 2 weeks to 30 days. And then if we revisit it. Sometimes I had one client that had, half of it came off of two bureaus, but then we had one bureau that we had to go back and resend some documentation to. So, but we all work together on that. But basically that's the process. And then once your score gets up to where your personal credit score is, then at this point we say, okay, we got all your scores over 700. send you back to your loan officer and, and then let them do the tri-merge credit report to, get them pre-qualified.
Excellent. Susan, could you please tell them a little bit of the documentation that the clients would need?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Mhm.
I once they decide they want to move forward, it's part of the setup in the software that we have, but we do need a clear copy of driver's license, social security card, and what we call proof of address. And proof of address is going to be a utility bill that or a bank statement or a pay stub, preferably a utility bill that matches their driver's license. Now, if it doesn't match, then we need the proof of address to make sure that that is your correct address because a lot of people don't change their addresses if they move. Sometimes they don't change it on their driver's license, but it is best for it to match.
So if it doesn't match, what's the process? You ask them for two ways of like two utility bills, or how do you
No,
validate
I
that?
just I just need the one. However, that's when the social security card comes into play, or we may ask for the passport. And it does kind of slow the process down because we have to do a different way of verifying that person when they don't match. So it does add a couple of weeks to the clean on the credit repair if it doesn't. But we do need to make sure that the proof of address or utility bill is the correct address of where they are presently living at the moment, even if it does not match their driver's license. So
Now,
for example, my driver's license says that I live at 1501 North Morgan. I lived there for a year. Um, but I physically live somewhere else. So when we go to do the clean up of the credit report, when it comes to addresses, I have to keep those two addresses. I have to keep my present one and then I have to keep the previous one because it matches my driver's license. Any and all other addresses can be deleted, but we
mhm.
have to keep them too. Or if, let's say, my driver's license matches my physical, then we get rid of all the other addresses and just keep the one. But basically, that's how that works.
And is that something that is going to stay in the credit? All the work that it will be done by Homeward Credit stays in a long-term basis, all the
Yeah,
fix-ups?
unless something else happens or unless there was something that hadn't hit, when we start the clean. I had a gentleman that we were 30 days in on him, and unfortunately there were two things that were hanging out in limbo that hit the credit after we started the clean. So now we've got to start with those. We got
Again.
some of them off, but the score didn't go up as high. And then when we started, looking at the new credit report, there were two new collections that had appeared that were not on the previous credit report. So those kind of things we can't help. So I like to advise the clients, please, if you self-report something to your credit, pay it on time or don't self-report it. And then any and all bills during the clean, don't be late. Don't use your credit cards up to the max or over the limit because over the limit on a credit card is a 100-point drop for that month.
Wow.
So, you just you gotta make sure that, they stay on top. And I apologize for the noise. The lawn people are here.
No
Um,
problem. We can't hear it. It's all good.
But so basically, generally, yeah, everything's going to stay off. If it does come back, I've not seen that at this point, but if it does, then, you give us a call and we're going to, take a look at it and say, hey, hopefully you've kept the credit monitoring, because it's only 16.99 and it's a really great way to make sure that you stay up with your credit and all three bureaus. We do have these links that we provide if you decide to go forward in the beginning. Another thing that because it's always ever changing, but I have these links that I provide when we get started on the credit clean for the client to go and opt out of all of the, what that does is that stops a lot of this, your information being shared people calling you from spam. And when we opt out of all of those, and there's actually 5 bureaus that we do because there's Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, LexisNexis, and Innovis, and they all have opt-outs. So we ask that everybody do that. And then if you haven't already set up logins with Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, we ask that you do that as well, because that's important, because then that will give you those alerts time frames. So in some instances, it could be 2 weeks, 2 days, it could be a month. It just depends. But if you have those logins, then you're going to get those alerts and then can let us know as well.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One more question. It wasn't too clear. It's $1 for the first week for the clients to be able to take a look at their credits, where they're at, their scores in the first week they paid $1. What if they need to continue to pay the coming weeks if they move forward, or until what point? 'Cause it'll be 16.99
Days.
every week.
And what happens is if you don't sign up for the monthly service, then I can't, if let's say a week goes by and we haven't connected to do the consultation, guess what? Then I can't look at the credit report because it logs you out. So I'll get the notification. I've had that happen. So then I'll call the client and say, hey, you need to go in and you need to sign up for the Credit Hero for the monthly service so that I can get the credit report. And then they do, and then I can get the credit report and do the consultation. But sometimes there's a lag from the moment that, everything gets done that we connect for the consultation. I mean, in a perfect world, it's all done in 24 hours, but we all know that everybody's busy, so sometimes it doesn't happen in that time frame.
And then it's 16.99 per week, or is it
Per
16.99
month.
per month?
Per month.
Okay, the monthly service. Okay, I see.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to report that the previous company I worked for, it was $29.99 for the exact same thing. And this one is encrypted with our software. So it just folds right in. And when updates happen, they alert us, which is really nice. So that's a much bigger savings than the credit monitoring service that I had at my previous company that was twice as expensive.
Great. And then one more thing that I wanted to see if you could explain to them, to give them some examples of the accounts that can be deleted or updated, or any samples or any success stories that you can tell us, so that they get an idea of how good this works, and from what score to what score you've seen the worst case scenarios and the best case scenarios, maybe a couple scenarios.
Well, like I said, it depends upon what you're deleting. I had one client who had 42 inquiries because they were trying to buy a vehicle, and unbeknownst to them, like every place in the world pulled their credit and did a hard pull. So they had like 42 inquiries. Just deleting those is like 100 points on the score because there was so many. I'm going to say 80 card. Let's say that they had a charge off for $2,000 on a credit card, and they paid that credit card off with the creditor, and it shows a zero balance. Their score is still going to be low, but if by removing that account, it's going to hike their score. Same goes for that $2,000 charge off credit card. Doesn't mean that they're not going to call you and try to collect that money, but we can get it removed and your score is going to skyrocket depending upon the amounts. We can remove repossessions of automobiles. Bankruptcies are a little tricky. That's a different ball game, but we can get those removed as well, depending upon, right now it depends upon if it's a 13 or a 7. 13 is, where they've made an agreement to pay all their creditors, and generally, if it's still active, then you kind of got to stick with it till it's done, and then you can get it removed. But it just depends upon what is on their credit. But most of the stuff that I see are late payments that were inquired were inaccurate and should be removed. Um, charged off accounts, and or derogatory slash collections. Those are and those are things that we just like completely remove. And it just depends upon what their score is and as to how many accounts they have. So I'm going to pick on my one little guy that had the two new collections that popped up. So
Mm-hmm.
we removed four collections
Okay.
and we cleaned up his addresses, removed the inquiries. He only got 40 points in his score across the board because he had two new collections that showed up.
Ugh.
So once we get those removed, we should see a 40 to 80 point hike, which will get him up into the high 600s, which then he'll be able to apply for that FHA loan that he is wanting to get, along with Hometown Heroes. I'm picking on him because if he didn't have those two collections that popped up, he would have been at 680 so that he could have gone ahead and
Move
bought it.
forward.
And he understood, he's like, that's on me, So now we've got another round that we call like round two that we're doing to get those removed off of his credit. So in the end, he's going to go up about 100 points, basically, once we get everything removed off of his credit. So
Okay,
it
so
just,
go ahead.
hang on one second. I'm going to shut this because I can't hear you. Any of you out here? Sorry about that. He's like literally right outside the door and I couldn't hear you.
Yep, no problem. And the good thing is that we can hear the noise. We can hear you, so that's so good.
Okay, that's good.
The bad part, you can hear me. But so let's say that you have some collections. Are there some collections that you're gonna say you cannot remove these because of a reason, and then some that you could be able to remove, or you can remove all collections or the team will find a way to do that?
We we pretty much try to find a way to get them all removed. But basically, the reason why we ask for that credit monitoring system is when we get the credit report, all three bureaus are lined up. And it now, of course, I'm not in compliance, but we have attorneys that write these letters. There are many, many, many laws for the consumer credit report that if there's so many certain violations and we you can count them. Sometimes I'll see up to 20 violations on one account.
Wow.
And the more violations, the easier it is to get it removed. If they can't verify, they have no other choice but to remove it. That's why it's important for everyone to opt out on these bureaus
Oh,
because it you put your current address and any other address then gets removed off your credit report. Guess what? Then they can't find it. That's just kind of one example. But there's many other codes and letters that compliance sends out in order to get that removed. It's much easier to remove an entire account than it is to get late pays removed, believe it or not. I mean, we can get them removed, but they take a little bit longer than just actually getting the whole account removed. But we don't want to remove everything off of their credit. I had some instances where I cleaned their credit too good and they went from having a 490 score to a big zero.
really?
So then they had to buy a trade line because we needed to get them something because they had no open accounts. So I look at all of that and say, hey, okay, if we clean everything off of your credit, you're not going to have anything. So go do this or go do that, and before we start removing literally everything off of the credit. So you want to have history. So like if you have a paid out mortgage, that's paid as agreed. Those are great. Longevity on credit cards with high limits, low balances. I do counsel people, say, hey, this card, you're over 30%. If you just paid $50, you're going to get under that 30%. Make sure you keep it there. It reports on this day because every creditor reports once a month on a specific day. So it's
Mhm.
important. You can use that card all you want, but just make sure you pay it prior to
That
the
day.
report date to get it under that 30% mark if at all possible, and never let it go over the limit. If it goes over the limit and they report, that's almost 100-point drop in your
Yes.
score for 30 days, and then you got to wait for it to re-report.
I see
So
what
just little things like that I counsel people on too, and then we get rid of the bad stuff, what I call the collections derogatory or, whatever.
So you see a time frame from somebody that is committed to do certain things, to do what you suggest in your consultation. What's the time frame that you've seen a best case scenario and a worst case scenario of a significant credit score increase where they're ready to buy a house?
Well, best case is going to be 30 days.
Oh wow.
I'm not going to tell you it's going to be less than that. You will see results less time than that. But 30 days is pretty much that window of, let's get everything out there, let them do their thing. Because see, the credit bureaus have a certain amount of time from the time they receive everything to do their due diligence before you get it removed. But by having the client's logins, we can expedite that with the client. So, like for example, if we know that this debt is connected to this address, we can have the client go in and make sure that they get that address removed.
I
Does that
see
make
what you
sense?
mean. That makes sense. And then the last question, and then we'll pass into questions for everybody else. But I kind of wanted to do this question and answer so that it's probably hitting some of the questions that the people had, and the ones that I didn't cover, then they can ask themselves. But I wanted to ask you in this credit report, once you are taking off the accounts, um, if they're calling you back and say this collection needs to be paid, and could it come back to their credit once you
It
remove it?
could. I've been doing credit repair for several years, and I've seen it a couple of times. But then you just go hit it again. But I've only seen it a couple of times in my hundreds and hundreds of people that I've helped. Usually it does not
Okay.
um, come back. The only time that might happen is if in the process, maybe it got sold to another collection because people buy those debts, those bad
Yes.
debts, and sometimes they're in transition.
Okay.
And so then you'll see it pop back on, but it will be with a different provider. I see a lot of duplication too because of that. I'll see the same debt might be listed 3 times with 3 different collection providers, and then, you can just get rid of them all that way. But usually, sometimes it's the same debt.
Okay. And my last question would be like, the fee for Homeward, it could be a flat fee of $600, and it can go up depending on the consultation. Now, apart from that, in the consultation, they're going to give them are you going to give them a budget, or will I be giving them a budget, like to pay off certain accounts? Like how much money will they need apart from the fee, Homeward's fee, to get to the score that they're desiring?
That's variable because each client is different. So, like I had one young lady that I'm working with that she had her name on a auto that really wasn't her. She was just a co-signer, and she was able to get the person who actually had the car to refinance it in their name. And, and so I counseled her on that. So that took, her contacting the person to say, you need to get this out of my name. I'm trying to do XYZ and you're hindering me from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, she had some other things that she moved forward with the credit repair that we're getting removed off of her credit. But so it just depends. It could be, it could be that they pay the 600 and then maybe they have two credit cards that are over the limit and they need to pay those down, and then that's going to get their score where it needs to be in 30 days, whenever the report dates are. So it just depends, like I said, because every creditor has a different day that they report. So you might, if you have six credit cards, they all might report on completely different days. So
Mm-hmm.
your score could go up and down, depending upon what your balance is when that particular creditor reports. So that would be the only advice I'd give in a consultation is, hey, you might want to pay this down. You might want to do that because personal credit scores, let's say if they're all 700,
Mm-hmm.
that when we pull a tri-MERS on the mortgage side, which is required from a
Yep.
third party, that it's
Mm-hmm.
average data, so the score is going to be lower. I've seen it as low as 40 points lower than what their personal score is.
Mm-hmm.
So I've also seen it 2 points lower, so it just depends on who that loan officer is and what credit provider they're using.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes their data is not as fresh as it would be with the regular credit bureaus. So, like if
And
you log into
usually,
your personal credit today on Equifax, that's
mm-hmm.
an accurate score
Mm-hmm.
that may not be the score that we get when we do the trimers. That's all I'm trying to say. That
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference because it's averaged from all three bureaus. They take all the stuff and they average it together and then get those scores that way, and it's always lower.
Mm-hmm. For the mortgage. So this is the personal credit report that they're going to be working on directly with the bureaus, but that doesn't mean, I mean, then they have to wait. Would you say it's good for them to wait a month before they get it pulled in the mortgage company?
It
It's
depends
good.
upon the credit provider. So I can pick on Ryan when they were
Mm-hmm.
using Advantage with the previous company.
Mm-hmm.
They were not up to date. And they even admitted it when we would call because I would say, okay, here's their personal credit scores. Here
Mm-hmm.
they are. And then he would pull the trimers and it wouldn't be reflected. So I
Mm-hmm.
always would say, okay, wait a week, call them before you pull to ask, did you have current data on this particular individual? And then pull because it's also expensive. All the credit agencies on the mortgage side have increased their price. I know mine went from 95 for a tri-merge to 137
Wow.
from December 31st to January 1st. It was just like overnight, it almost doubled, which is crazy, to go up, well, 40, $50 or whatever. That's a lot. So we don't want to pull that, and have that expense to the borrower unless they're ready. So I always tell people to wait at least a week or 10 days from the time that I say they're clean to pull that tri-merge. And then I go over with the client too. Hey, make sure you don't miss a payment. Make sure that you keep your credit cards under the limit or under that 30% mark is ideal, but not everybody can do that in today's environment. We totally get that, but just making sure that they're where they need
They're
to
not.
be before they go back to the loan officer and say, "Hey, you can pull my credit now."
Okay, so we're gonna pass the word to any agent that want to make raise up a question or has any doubts. Go ahead and you can unmute your microphones and just ask away. Anybody? 'Cause I can think of like three, four, 10 more questions. So if you guys don't have any.
I put on my screen another campaign that went out, and I'm always in them as a test, so I get to see all the ones that go out. And this was another one that went out. Um, he picks realtors, so there's specific realtor campaigns, then there's borrower campaigns, there's loan
Mhm.
officer campaigns. So there's a lot of little different campaigns we do.
that we could support the agents. Like if they had a database of clients that they wanted to send, we could give them a template that they what they can send.
Yep.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So
Something
that
like this. So like there's this one and then the other one that I had up earlier. And then let me see if I have another one here. This one's similar. Just I like the one that has the picture on it. I'm a visual person, so
Mhm.
I told Jeff I said I like the ones that have the pictures on them.
Yeah, it catches more of the attention. Here is a question, I think.
Yeah, this
In the
one. This is
chat.
a one that has gone out quite a bit. This one right here. And I like this one because it's got this beautiful family here where, they're bought their house and then it just has the basic information. And then I like the fact that it has the 90-day guarantee. Most credit repair companies don't offer a guarantee.
Okay, I see that. We have some questions here in the chat. Maria Cristina is asking, like, the cost of 16.99 per month, and for how long?
Minimum 90 days.
Minimum 90 days. Because that's what we're saying. Like, sometimes it doesn't take 90 days, but at least we know that they are aware that that's the guarantee that we give, right? As the
Right. Yeah, because some things are stubborn, to be honest. I mean, sometimes they're stubborn and we got to do some extra work to get them off if they don't come off in the first round.
Uh-huh. So, and we have another question from Alejandra. Can someone call their credit card and ask to lower the rate to help client pay it faster? Is this something people can do? Does it affect their credit score?
Um, you can always call the credit company, whether or not they're going to lower your rate, especially if you're at the limit or if you're, behind, they're not going to lower the rate. They're going to increase the rate.
That's right.
But you can call them to find out exactly when they report so that you know the day that they report on so that you can make sure that your payment is there to keep your balance under the limit or under whatever mark you want to keep it at. The other thing, and it's not going to harm by doing that at all. It just helps you to understand your credit because my report date for the same credit card could be a completely different day. It doesn't mean just because you have a Chase card and I have a Chase card that they report on the same day. They don't.
Oh,
It,
I see
it
what you mean.
and I just had this conversation with Wells Fargo, because they're a big bank and they give out credit cards like crazy, right? So,
Mhm.
my due date is probably different than the next person's due date.
Absolutely.
So it
Make
is
it
a
one
good
day.
idea to call and learn, when they do report, because keep in mind they only report once a month. Now, I know that the credit agencies, in our world, in the mortgage world too, they're working on trended data. That's
Mhm.
something that has been in the works for months. It hasn't started yet. So right now it's every 30 days. So if you miss that mark and you're over the limit, your score is going to go way down. Or let's say, for example, you have a collection hit. Your score drops dramatically when it hits, but then it will go back up after a month or two, especially if you dispute it, it'll go right back up the next month.
I see.
So, so if we're working on it, then you'll see the score could go up and down, up and down.
And now for the people with no credit, they have a new social, they were, permanent residents or going through, that immigration process and they just got their social security. We have that a lot of the Latin American world. So that's where that part that you mentioned that they could buy a trade line
Mhm.
would come in. Could you explain a little bit about
Yep.
that?
Basically you pay for to be
Build
an
credit.
authorized user on someone's credit card.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't have family that they can turn to for that. So there are
Ways.
businesses that sell these
Trade line.
cards. You don't get a card. It just you're buying the 10-year history. Depends upon how old the account is, how high the limit is, and that type of thing. So what you want is high limit credit card, low
Long
balance.
history.
Long history, right? So I can pick on myself. I have one card I've had for 20 years,
Mhm.
and I use it and then I pay it off. And every time I do that, they raise my limit. I started out with like a $2,000 limit. I now have a $20,000 limit. Like, of course, I don't use that,
Mhm.
but it's because I use it and then
Okay.
I pay for a couple months and then I pay it off and then I use it, and then I pay it off. And every time you do that, they'll increase your limit.
Mhm. Yeah, I've seen that happen in my credit as well. Exactly what you just said. So, anybody that wants to ask anything, alguna persona que quiera hacer alguna pregunta, estamos ya con unos minutitos, 12 minutos a que se acabe esta clase, si quieren escribirla. I'm going to switch now into Spanish to give them like the close-up for the meeting. I don't think anybody wants to ask any more questions other than the ones in the chat. So, bueno, muchísimas gracias para aquellas personas que asistieron a esta clase. Como les dije hace un momento, Susan y yo trabajamos de la mano. Podemos el momento que ustedes tengan cualquier cliente o incluso ustedes mismos, si es que necesitan trabajar en sus créditos, déjenme saber con muchísimo gusto para yo manejar el proceso inicial, incluso con el cliente, si es que hay ciertos clientes que prefieren toda la consulta en español, Susan puede mandar todo por escrito en un email y yo ser quien les llame al cliente para darles todas las indicaciones que les dicen en el email. Y lo bueno de esto es que el cliente sigue viendo, va a pagar ese credit report la primera semana para saber su score y para empezar y para motivar es $1. Y después de ese dólar, después de una semana, tienen que poner la tarjeta. Entonces, si es que ellos pusieron la opción de cobrar mensualmente, se va a cobrar 16, $17 y eso va a permitir que el mismo cliente pueda ver todo el cambio. Eso es lo bueno, porque otras empresas pues te van diciendo y uno no tiene idea qué pasa. En cambio, aquí tú vas viendo el trabajo que va haciendo la compañía con cada bureau y es un proceso fascinante realmente, porque hay muchísima, la ley ampara muchísimo al consumidor de controlar, porque ha habido mucho abuso de estas empresas, de cómo reportan las cuentas y el consumidor se queda, no tiene el conocimiento para pelear estas cuentas y mucha gente tiene sus créditos arruinados por negligencia de las personas quienes reportan en su crédito. Entonces, dentro del equipo de Susan hay toda un equipo legal que tiene todo el conocimiento de todas las leyes para el consumidor, para saber de qué forma ellos han violado una ley que protege al consumidor y hay muchísimas formas. Entonces ellos escriben la carta por el cliente y hacen que usted reportó esto de tal forma y eso no es. Entonces escriben la carta por el cliente y certifican la carta. Se encargan de ese proceso y mandan las cartas a cada creditor. Y si el creditor, o sea, la persona que reporta en su reporte no puede defender de una forma legal, tiene que borrarle eso de su crédito. No tienen otra opción. Entonces, eso es algo fascinante que mucha gente no sabe esta información y hemos visto clientes desde 500, 400 scores subir a 600 o hasta 700 en 60 días, no es un año, no es 6 meses, no es que a veces dices tienes que pagar para que mejoren, antes te decían, para que mejore tu crédito tienes que pagar este charge-off y este $7,000. Entonces el cliente se quedaba como que no voy a gastar $7,000 en un trade line cuando yo tengo $7,000 para comprar la casa. Entonces ahí se quedaba. Pero esto es, buscan la manera legal de borrarte esas colecciones o de borrarte eso que dice en el crédito sin que tengas que pagarlo porque cometieron algún error legal en reportarlo. Entonces, es otra forma completamente nueva de el approach o la mirada de cómo ayudar a las personas a arreglar su crédito. Así que estoy al servicio. Can you share with us your contact information, Susan, en vía email? Sí, por supuesto. Nosotros vamos, después de este voy a hacer un follow-up email con todos los agents del club. Susan ahí dejó el contacto, el email de Susan. El mío es algo similar. Ya les voy a pasar por el chat que tenemos, que compartimos en The Club. Les paso toda mi información para que tanto directo con Susan como conmigo se puede identificar como un agente del club y nos puedan dejar saber cuáles son sus necesidades, tanto personales, porque yo sé y conozco varios, incluyéndome personas de mi familia o personas de mi entorno que quieren arreglar su crédito para propósito de comprar una casa. Igual si es que solo quieren arreglar su crédito, pues se puede ver, pero está enfocado, la estrategia de esta empresa es enfocarse en lo que necesita decir su crédito para comprar una casa. O sea, lo que le piden los bancos, que tenga no sé cuántos trade lines, o que tenga, que no se pase de los límites, o que lo que ve un banco que le va a dar un préstamo de una casa para darle el préstamo. Ese es el enfoque de esta empresa. Así que con eso me despido. Thank you, Susan, very much. I was wrapping up and giving some of the process on how to contact me. And then in the chat, we do share a chat for the club members. We have about 170 realtors in that chat, which I will post my contact information, your contact information there, and we'll be sharing the templates. They're very interested that we share the templates with them. You're muted.
Yep, I got to get with Jeff on that. So I put that in the chat. And what the other thing is if we get their emails, we can add them to the campaign. I don't know which way he wants to do it. So
Got it.
I don't handle the marketing, but I will get with Jeff on that.
Yep, no problem. I'll make sure that I sit with Jeff as well, and we'll get that figured out. All the people that tell me that they want to receive the templates, then we'll get the emails through the chat, and I'll get them to you or to Jeff as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe he could just create flyers and we could just send those out to them and then they could post that on their social media because
Yeah,
it's all done through
absolutely.
like Canva and it actually you can create for Insta all the different social media and then it does it the right size and stuff. So I'll ask him about that.
Thank you very much. So we'll be following up, and I appreciate Maria Cristina for your time. I hope you get very well soon. We missed hearing your voice and seeing your beautiful face. I appreciate it for the space, and thank you everybody that took the time to connect to this meeting today.
Yeah, thank you
Gracias,
for having
Susan.
me.
Thank you, Susan, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye
I'll send you an
bye.
email with all my information too.
Awesome. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I'm looking forward to it. Bye bye.